Okay, so we're
Well,
recording now, you guys.
thank you all so much for joining this evening. It's evening time for me, morning for some of you, afternoon for others. Sunday Sangha happens every Sunday at this time. We have different presenters from different backgrounds, different disciplines, oftentimes related to yoga, but also community building, storytellers, people connected to different cultures, indigenous cultures, elders. We've been fortunate to have a good number of elders participate and share knowledge. And we're really excited for the presentation this evening. We're going to start this evening with just bringing our attention to our breath. So we usually like to start with a brief meditation to bring us into the space, present space and time, to align our focus, be able to give our presenter and the space the full attention. So find a comfortable seat and bring some length into your spine. Allow the eyes to close. And bring your awareness to your breathing. Observing the inhalation through your nostrils, the exhalation through your nostrils. Soften the abdomen. And notice the air a bit cooler as it enters the nose, a bit warmer as it leaves. Observe any areas you might be holding tension in the body and give yourself the space and permission to release the tension. Just watching this breath, this gift that we all have. Our deep breaths. And we can all gently open our eyes. Thank you once again for being in this space. I'll hand it over to Francisco.
Welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos. It's a pleasure to be hosting this space for Maya to share her stories with us. And I met Maya in Washington, D.C., actually officially in person a couple of years ago at Kepra's Raw Food and Juice Bar in Capitol Hill in D.C. And the more I've interacted with her, just been learning a lot about her path, and she's always brought balance and harmony to different work environments that she's been in. Like that's kind of been her trajectory and her mission, her dharma. She's also a renowned jazz singer, which I didn't know, but that makes sense to me. It's like as you learn about people, the more you get to know them, then you learn more about their history. And when you start to learn about their history, you're like, oh, that's pretty clear. So really grateful to be holding this space with her, and also to be collaborating with her and Salim, and supporting her vision and a lot of other circles that we've been moving in, all within the yoga community. She's Maya is the vice president of cross-cultural advancement for Yoga Alliance, and her task is to build international relationships between Yoga Alliance and its global members with the purpose of enhancing diversity, ensuring diversity, and inclusivity, accessibility, and equity programs and efforts, which is a pretty beautiful vision to take on. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you. Hello, Celine. It's great to see everyone here today. And I'd like to welcome you to Synergy Sangha. So I almost want to say, there I go, there I go, there I go, there I go. Just let you hear a little bit.
Please. Don't hold back, Maya.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, well,
So, when I thought about this Sangha, I thought, where do I begin? Where do you begin to tell your story? And what struck me is I wanted to start with the loss of my brother Peter. And that was a turning point for me. My brother Peter died of AIDS, and I was his caregiver for 2 years. Prior to that 2 years, I had been studying yoga. So I flew to California, bringing my bag of metaphysical tricks with me to share with him. Meditation, breath work, the whole schmear of what I had been studying. And my brother, who was a physician, really didn't look upon my offerings as anything that would be helpful to him. There was at one point he said to me, he was a very calm man, and he said, I understand, Maya, that you are studying and you have all of these things to offer me, but please let me do my thing. I am into allopathic medicine. I want to take this retrovirus concoction here and let me keep my focus there. So even though I was disappointed, I said fine, because I respected him and I know he so believed in medicine. So during the 2 years that I was with him, um, you know, everything we got through. We kept getting through one crisis after another. And then he, even though toward the end, he opened up to me and he allowed me to light a candle in his room. Till I did several candles, to teach him how to breathe so that he could relax deeper. And then I taught him movements and restorative yoga to help him to cope with the ravages of the AIDS virus. So I call this a starting point for me, because those 2 years that I was with him, I wasn't studying. I wasn't. I was off of my journey, so to speak. So after my brother passed, I went into a state of despair and woe. I love to say woe because it's an odd word, but it sort of describes that void, that empty feeling that we have when we're struggling with the loss of someone we love dearly. So during this 6 months, I guess it took me about 6 months of being in that void, I started to look at a book that had been given to me. Right after my brother passed, I started talking to he was a psychiatrist, Dr. Leland Goldstein. So I'm working with him, and he recommended I read Care of the Soul, which is a book that was written by Thomas More. I didn't look at it until a few months after my brother passed, when I started to think, I need to get out of this space where I feel so lost, and I wasn't doing yoga. I was just in this abyss sort of pain. And I started to practice yoga and read Care of the Soul simultaneously. I'd read a little, I'd practice. I'd practice, I'd read. I'd sit in stillness. I would do many of the things that I had been studying and had read about. So when I started, I recalled something my brother had said to me. He was very wise. And he said to me, don't let my death or anything turn you around. Study yoga. He said, and live your life to its fullest. So as I'm reading, Thomas More says, you can't work with people who have challenges unless you get to that place within them where they can find their joy, where they can return and bring their soul forward, where they can do those things that nourish their body, mind, and spirit. So I am listening to this voice of my brother who would come to me often and say, get up, you know, get out of bed, get going, you know, because I took to the bed for 1 year. This is terrible to say, but I wore the same dress. That shows you where I was. And it was about 3 years ago, I found that dress. And it just blew my mind because I had started to believe, oh, maybe that was a fantasy. Maybe I didn't wear that blue dress, but I did. And I have it in my bottom drawer up in my bedroom, one of my bottom drawers. But reading that work by Thomas More and listening to the voice from my brother's spirit helped me go back to yoga. So I went in, sort of went back to studying and to doing Seva. Kripalu is in Lenox, Mass. So I started doing Seva there, which is selfless service, so that I could be there as often as I wanted. So I could stay for a week, 2 weeks, you know, 30 days, whatever, and not have to fork over the high rates that has always been at most of these retreat centers. So I'm studying, and it's just, you know, I'm in bliss, you know. At that time, my youngest child was 21 in graduate school, and my boys had sort of taken off and were beginning, you know, living with someone, or they had an apartment, they were living their lives. So I was suddenly this very free being. And I got invited to go to India. And I was doing so much seva at Kripalu that they thought I was one of the staff or one of the team. So the invitation got extended to me because of the work I did. And I went to India. And in India, I was there for 3 months. I really went into the depths of yoga, because when you're sequestered from your regular life, from grocery stores, from friends, you go within. You can go deep within, and I chose to. I'm like, this is the first time I have been alone anywhere. So I started to really access meditation and pranayama and conscious eating. While I was in India, we practiced mitahar, and that was 1 handful of food. That's it. That was your meal 3 times a day. So, you know, it was quite a journey. And, you know, when you have less digestion and et cetera happening, it seems that you can go within deeper and you can connect to spirit in an easier way, although none of it was easy, to tell you the truth. Eating mitahar was not easy. Sleeping on, let me tell you, there was a mattress that was so thin. I mean, it was very thin. The thing that saved me is that I love clothes and scarves. So I had all kinds of stuff with me. So I was able, which I didn't need to wear because it's so hot in India, you can't wear your regular clothes. I padded the mattress underneath with all my clothes. So I slept as comfortably as I possibly could. I digress. But, you know, I asked, there was a moment where we all were in a big gathering, and we were able to ask questions of our teachers. And I got up, went to the dais, and I said, you know, what can I bring back? My people suffer, my people struggle, you know, back in the United States. What can I bring to them to help them change their experience of life? And she said, she did the yoga thing. She said, teach the breath, Maya, teach the breath. And, you know, that really impacted me, because I thought, you know, most people of color that I knew at the time were looking at me like I had suddenly lost my mind and was studying yoga. And they were like, what is this? What is wrong with you? My children, before I went to India, my children had an intervention with me, and they all came home and we sat in the living room and they wanted to know, was I doing the right thing? Was I, had something happened to me that they didn't know about? You know, all kinds of questions. And I am just grateful that I was strong enough to tamp down the voices of my family, my children, my closest friends, and took my happy self to India. So, you know, this was, I had the breath now. I returned to the United States, and I experienced just the challenges of our communities and our culture. And that's all people of color, and that's the differently abled and the and LGBTQIA community. My brother belonged to that community. So, you know, when I came home, it's like I was on fire. And, but yet I was a struggling yogi. You know, so it's like, okay, now how am I going to make a living? How can I do this? Because I knew I couldn't take a job again. I knew that yoga was my path. Something told me deep within that I should stick to this. And so I did. And I remembered years ago, I had a job where I would do calls. This was when I was very young. I would cold call people to sell magazines, and I was very good at it. So I created a list. I made this long list of all the businesses. I went to the Department of Labor. I got a list of businesses with over 500 people, business with 250, businesses with 50, and I would be my own booking person. And I would call them and talk about stress and talk about John Kabat-Zinn's new program in mindfulness, and were they curious about learning about mindfulness or stress. And after a few weeks, I started booking myself. And, you know, I just started to go to the veterans. I started to go to various hospitals where they were just doing special programs for people with cancer and diabetes. And I would offer a class to these populations who were being supported. Um, it was a challenging time, but a divine time. I kept listening within. I offered classes at my home to attract people of color. I would say, we're going to practice yoga, take a walk, and then we're going to have breakfast. And my classes just filled up. But I taught everybody. I was not just teaching people of color, but that was always the undergirding of my uh, um, desire to reach people. I just knew that what was happening with our bodies, with obesity, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, heart disease, all of those things could be either well managed or abated with the practice of yoga. And I also knew that yoga could be carried in your pockets. You know, it could be tucked in your bra. You could take yoga anywhere and everywhere. You didn't need equipment. You really needed just your body, mind, and spirit. And if you were not cognizant of your spirit or your mind, it didn't matter. You could just be totally into your body, and yoga would still begin to work its metaphysical magic on you. So I think I'm going to take a breath. Breathe with me. Exhale. And you know, when you turn up the corners of your lips, you increase prana within your being. So let's all turn the corners of our lips up, taking in more prana. And this is, I'm telling you about my beginning, and I'd like to pause here just to see if anyone has a question about this beginning of my journey.
Yeah, I do actually. Two questions. I didn't jot down the name of Thomas More's book. The technical question. What was the name, Maya?
Care of the Soul.
Okay, great. We'll put it in the chat. And then I was curious what year you went to India. And I'm partially asking because it leads to how perceptions of yoga have changed since that time and now.
Absolutely. First, I'll say my brother Peter died in 1990. I went to India in 1994. And I started on the path of yoga in 1987. That's when I started doing Seva at Kripalu and studying to become a teacher.
Great.
Any other questions?
Have you gone back to Kripalu to present?
Are you kidding? Of course. One of the things, you knew that, Francisco. Yes. I'm an emeritus trustee at Kripalu, and I have been that for many years now. Along the trajectory of my path, I started, when I was able to pull myself out of my woe and sadness, I started teaching. And so I taught in Rhode Island, and then it grew. So I was getting invitations after I did my looking into the and searching for jobs. Then after teaching for a few years, I started getting calls. And I was teaching all through New England, offering stress management, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and prayer as practices to support all peoples. And but in my mind's eye, I'm always cognizant of how the marginalized community was left of center and had been left out of the equation. Yes, question.
Now what?
I think that was just reverb.
Oh, that was just somebody. Okay, okay. So, so one of the things I did was I created a proposal for the yoga retreat for women of color. And that was in 1999. I created this after India because I was being, really, the thought was, how can I reach people? How can I reach my people? And I kept thinking, I'll go through the women. I'll start with women of color and work through them. So I wrote a proposal for the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. And I just, it took me months to get this proposal approved. There was so many excuses back then. Women of color won't come, they're too far away, there's so much of a challenge. Maya, do you really think you should do this? I'm not sure. And it went on and on. So finally, someone said, let's give it a shot. Oh, there's an echo. So anyway, I had a small article in Essence magazine. It was like this big, the teeniest little mention of the yoga retreat for women of color. And I had been told that if you get just 10 people, we'll let you have it, but you've got to get 10. And I had about 119 women who came that first retreat. And then, what that did was reinforce that I'm on the right path. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And, when you
Your
think
first retreat, pardon Maya, was 119 women? Is that
yes,
okay.
from all over. And that was largely due because I didn't have any marketing acumen or support, but it was because when I announced it, someone contacted Essence and they had a little teeny blurb about it. And that way I was able to reach people. People came from all over the United States and Bermuda. There was no transportation problem. There was no payment problem, as I had been warned might be the case. So I'm happy to say that up until COVID-19, the Yoga Retreat for Women of Color had been celebrating, I think, its 21st year last fall and last summer. And so when and if they open, I believe they will open, but when they open again, the Yoga Retreat for Color will be returned, and at Kripalu or someplace else in the future. Um,
I'm sure people have questions about that if they haven't already participated, but maybe you guys, I'll be putting Maya's contact information too. So you got, you know, I know a lot of my friends who are joining today have a lot of questions that'll probably keep going. Um, Continue, Maya.
does anyone have any questions? Feel free.
How do I engage in the, how would people like engage in your retreat? Where would they go if they want to?
Go to the Facebook page,
Okay.
Yoga Retreat for Women of Color. Uh, it's on Facebook. It's listed just like that.
Okay.
And so there is no, I am not having the Yoga Retreat for Women of Color this year. On August 16th, I will be offering the Healing Retreat for People of Color. And that's August 16, 2020. And so you'll hear more about that. Just visit my Facebook page or send me your contact information. But this will be the first retreat for people of color. And it will be a virtual retreat on August 16th, 2020. So I'm very excited. I've got a good team that I'm working with, and I'm also partnering with Ivy Child International to make this retreat a reality, a happening event. So here's an interesting thing that I did on this journey. After I came back from the India and I started the yoga retreat for women of color, I organized a sit-in at Kripalu. And when I say sit-in, I mean just like Martin Luther King sit-in, you know, where people of color, there were a few of us, we decided to do this during their annual yoga teachers conference. And so we sat there, and our purpose was to discuss, to bring to the awareness of everybody, where are the people of color? Where are the differently abled people? Why is this place quote unquote white? Why are not others here? And how can we begin to do outreach and make connections with others who could benefit from the programs and the workshops that are offered here? So at the outset of the sit-in, I'm just telling you this because I think it's funny, sort of, but an announcement was made that said something like, down the hall, while Maya's sit-in is going on, we're going to give each person who comes down the hall a $250 coupon to the bookstore. Now, you know, that's not true, but that's how I'm trying to show you that they offered something fantastic. So I'm sitting there with these three people waiting for the people to join us for our sit-in. And of course, everybody's down the hall. So we're sitting, and suddenly the door opens. One person comes in, two people, then there's 75, then there's 200, then there's 300 people, because these were large gatherings. And from that gathering, a gentleman who was named Justin, he stood up and said, I donate a lot of money to Kripalu, but I'm going to earmark this money for the ideas that Maya has. We need to bring people of color. And so, you know, that was one of my, one of the things I'm very proud of. That's the first and the last sit-in that I organized, but I'm just, you know, really happy that I did that. And
Are you sure it's your last?
no, now that we're living through these times, I have no idea what I'm going to do. You know, because I keep writing about and telling people the revolution is our health and well-being, you know, for the revolution against racism, against violence, against all of the various things that impact people of color is health, it's consciousness, it's awareness, it's, you know, creating a way of being that supports you no matter what circumstance you're in. so that you always are aware, accepting, and adjusting. In yoga, the philosophy, the thing, there's a practice, it's called awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. So if people know that, if someone is stopped by the police, to be aware, to accept, look at this situation, and then make the adjustment. Yes, what do you need? You know what I mean? There are times when we have to fall into an adjustment that may not be what we want, but will keep us alive. And this goes for men and for women. So after I raised all the ruckus uh, at Kripalu, I was invited to become a member of the board of trustees. And I was very reluctant at first because I thought, they're just bringing me on the board so I won't keep pushing the river, pushing the whatever. And I had a conversation with my mother, and she said something like, when Black people are asked to serve on boards, we must do this. So I took my mother's counsel and went on the board, being the first and Black woman to serve on the board of trustees. And it was a lot of work, but I was young enough and strong enough and on fire so that my every word, every breath, every awareness that I raised was about bringing in people of all cultures and all persuasions to study and practice yoga and to learn to become teachers. So what grew out of my time there was the Teaching for Diversity program, where people would teach, and then also there were scholarships made available for teachers to study at Kripalu. And even today, I was recently in touch with the president before the COVID pandemic, and they're not anywhere near where they need to be. It's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Skip to the side, skip to the right, skip to the left. It's hard to move things when it comes to equity, inclusivity, diversity, and accessibility. So they're still in the battle with that.
Yeah.
But yes, questions.
Maya, I mean, it seems like if anyone's going to give them some guidance, it's you. You volunteered there so much so that they thought you were a staff person there. You've been, on the board. You've done a sit-in there, like you've led retreats. So, it would seem they would be looking at you for a lot of guidance at this moment.
Well, I have been involved as much as I'm able to be, but my involvement has always been since I'm independent as a consultant. So I've consulted with them, and they've been bringing in some great Ruth King, Verna Myers. They're working with people who can really help them move the needle. So, it's fun to sit in an emeritus role and see things happening and support and but not be on the front lines of that battle, if you will. I can't believe you all don't have any questions. Yes.
I have a question. I hope I can formulate it accurately, but I have a question regarding what is, hearing from your perspective, what the challenge is in terms of the racism within the yoga community, because it is something that when I first started doing yoga years ago, it was like a tone or something that I could sense. It would be very nuanced in a studio. Something would happen. It would be very nuanced. And it wasn't until I was doing yoga more regularly that I really started to pick up on things that were inherently, racist, or so there was just this tone. But I remember when I had an opportunity to go to Bali, and there was a a space, and part of our retreat was about yoga. And it was like, I was so excited about it because I had actually fallen away from yoga. And I was so excited. I was like, this is my opportunity to get it back and to come back to yoga. And the tone, I felt the tone there as well. And so I would just be curious to hear from your perspective, why is there sort of this inherent space, or is it inherent? I may be making assumptions, but why is there a lack of diversity in the yoga space, I guess is my question.
Thank you for your question. You know, I think it boils down to a word, and it's called racism.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two types of racism. There's covert and there's overt racism. You know, so the person who's waving the Confederate flag and you know is more overt. The covert racist, many believe that they are not racist. You know, they're and then there are those who know they're racist and they're uh, doing it in a very subtle way. I started yoga, like I said, in the mid '80s, and there were no people of color in the classes where once I started teaching in the early '90s. I'm teaching the classes, but I had mostly um, um, Caucasian people joining my classes, and I think that the tone when Swami Paramahansa Yogananda came to speak at the Parliament of Religions in the 1800s, no Black people were allowed, or it must have been the 19 something. Black people weren't allowed to join. And he took his teachings and started a study group for Black Americans, you know, because he knew that no matter what he did, he wasn't going to be able to bring them into these gatherings that were primarily created for white people. I do think it's racism, and racism has many different facets to it. You know, it's not just I don't like you for the color of your skin. It's sometimes it could be the history of who you are. It can be my pain for my involvement with your history. It can be, you know, I am in a certain socioeconomic status and you don't belong there. And, you know, yoga, when it started, when the Yoga Journal magazine started, all this was, it was since I've been in yoga. You know, there were no people of color who were involved in creating these organizations. And, you know, it's just the tone of it is what the media gave to it by showing practitioners who were thin and blonde, or, you know, white women, or, oh, you've got the group, oh, that's great. And also, you know, there were you know, the media did not share anything that was happening with the Black
I
community.
see. Got it.
You know, so I attribute it to racism. I believe that people are trying to change, that we're
Yeah.
looking to create a new algorithm that will support people of color. But I am, this is 30 plus years, and I know there are many Black teachers out there. But when I'm asked to speak and present, and I look in the audience, there are very few people who look like me. There are very few differently abled people. There are very few people who are in the LGBTQIA area. So I think it's been set up as something that's for one as part of our population, and it's just continued. But now, I guess in 2016 or 2017, I co-created the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance because I was meeting Black teachers who were taking my training, and I was traveling, was doing conferences, etc. And I realized we don't have anything of our own. And so I joined with Jana Long, and we created the nonprofit, the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance, which is another way, and it's an open organization. Anyone can join, anyone can donate, anyone can come to the conferences that are held by them. And so you know, it's a place where we provide education and scholarships and resources for yoga teachers of color, and particularly Black yoga teachers, but teachers of color are also welcome. So I'll
Thank
say
you
it
so
once
much.
again, I think it's just racism, and it's
Yeah.
something we're trying to change in this world that we live in. I'm looking
Thank you.
around to see if there's any more
Thank you.
questions. Was that good?
Yes, it was. Thank
Yes,
you.
Linda.
Oh, go ahead, Linda. Linda
Hi.
Key has.
Can you all hear me? I've got a fan on in my space.
Yes.
Hi, Maya. I'm Linda, and I'm actually up in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. And a lot of beliefs up here that racism doesn't exist, which is obviously untrue. We just don't hear about. We don't really hear much about Canada, really. So recently, with the Black Lives Matter movement and you know, the COVID-19, like all the tension with you know, the anti-Asian racism and anti-Black racism. My colleagues and I, so I work in, obviously I do yoga and synergy, and I also work in the performing arts community. And so what's happening now is a lot of forums are being held for people of color to empower ourselves and try to change the systemic racism. But at the same time, myself and other colleagues of color are also being asked to do a lot of consultation for the white community. And so I think because it's in our nature to be healers and to be listeners and to advocate for not just ourselves, but other marginalized people, that we are trying to navigate how to be available for the white community because they have so much questions. And I wonder how that was different for you when you started, but for us people of color now, I actually feel me and my colleagues are feeling pulled in different directions because we're trying to advocate for ourselves and the Black community and the Indigenous community. And so there's this pull to do this consultation with the white community. So my question is, how do you feel that is a healthy way to navigate through that landscape?
Thank you, Linda. I'll tell you, when I first started, there were no people asking me for my opinion or how to help. That was different. Now people are really, I mean, so many people contact me and said, what can I do? What can I do? Here's what I think. You know, in order for people who have been ignorant of racism and ignorant of the violence that's been meted out to people of color, to educate them, they may need us not to go in and share information. The important thing to do, if you are asked, is to charge for it. If you just invite people over to have a conversation, that's not the way to do it. It's like, so-and-so called you, someone called me and asked me, and then I said, well, you know, I charge $175 an hour, and I'm happy to come and talk to your group. I was happy to go. Do you know what I mean? You decide what your rate is going to be, and even if it's your best friend or your neighbor, just say, you know, let me know, put a group together, and I'll be happy to come and speak. I charge from $175 to $200 an hour. This is an opportunity. Most people in the healing arts, oh, you got it? Yep. Most people who are in the healing arts are, you know, we give away too much. The point is just, and it'll shut people right up when you tell them what you charge. They will go, oh, yeah, I'll get back to you. And, you know, and that's what you want. You know, I mean, I'm from New England. I have lots of friends of white friends. I grew up here. I have lots of people here. And I'll have a conversation with my closest friend, but I don't let it take my energy. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's what I say. Don't call me after 4 p.m. The best time if you want to have a conversation with me is between 7 and 7:45 a.m. And that keeps people from calling you. You know, the thing is, you can't take on too much of this because the tumultuousness of the COVID-19 pandemic and where we are with the recent deaths of so many, and they just keep occurring, and the violence against the Asian community, all of those things, even if it's not you, you're still getting impacted by it. So you want to save yourself. You want to save your energy. You want to take listen, in yoga, all of yoga is about self, you know, connecting to the divine and then knowing that that's you too. So connect to the divine, honor the self. And this problem is not going to be changed overnight. It's not going to be changed by one of our conversations. So, you know, look at it from a very, um, how do I serve myself? How does this serve me? And if it serves you financially, that's something, you know. If it serves you because you're going to feel better talking to the neighborhood church group, you know, and you'll give them a lower rate. But I think it's very important to charge, to know your worth, and to let people know that this is what I charge. Years ago, when I had trouble charging money because I was Miss Do Good, I made a rate sheet for myself. And so when someone would call me, I wouldn't get nervous. I'd whip out my rate sheet. And I had a rate, you know, for workshops, I started to have a rate for people would call me just to talk. So I created a yoga life. And then they would pay me a minimum of $75 an hour to talk with me. And, you know, the reason I did that is because by the time I finished talking, I'd be exhausted and broke. You know, those were during those years when I was just a yogi out here living and working. So I learned how to take care of my body, mind, and spirit, how to save myself, and how to honor myself by putting a monetary value on the work that I have been called to do. Does that help, Linda?
Yes, thank you, Maya. And I really appreciated that you put together money and time. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to share my a question from Carrie. I'm going to read it out. I'm going to read it out for her because she posted it to the group chat. Carrie asked if you could comment on ways you've seen yoga culture or studios that have moved the needle in the right direction of equity. Do you see cost as one hindrance to inclusion, or have people of color, or having people of color as owners and teachers?
Thank you. You know, I think that among us, we will always have people who are socioeconomically deprived and challenged. And then we also have people who are making it, quote unquote, by society standards. You know, they're making it, doing whatever they do. So there are always people who will come and pay, people of color. My thing was, my door is open, but how can I include the person who could never get the money together? Even the $20 for a yoga class was prohibitive for them. So I tried to teach through the lens of how can what I offer be inclusive? How can it bring in the people who just simply don't have the funds? You know, so I would earmark so many of my spots for people that I knew, or somebody would contact me and say something. I'd say, tell them to come. You know, say if I had 15 people in a class, at least 6 of those were either giving me gifts or bringing me something. but they didn't have money. I would get incense, I would get all kinds of gifts because, you know, that's Dana, you know, they would bring me Dana, or they'd come with a prayer, that's Dana as well. So, you know, I have witnessed that there are many yoga studios that are owned by people of color throughout um, the United States. And now that I'm really talking to the global community, I know there are studios there. I think sometimes registering a school is prohibitive because the cost to register a school, I work for Yoga Alliance now, through Yoga Alliance can be very prohibitive for certain countries where people are, you know, their GDP is different and they can live for a month in Mexico. A $65 fee supports a family for a month. You know, that was told to me recently. And if we look all over, these are issues.
Yeah.
I believe, and I know that I am vice president of cross-cultural advancement at Yoga Alliance. And I know that Yoga Alliance, I know Yoga Journal magazine, everyone has been enlivened, not just with what happened recently, but a little bit, but now they really are alive. You know, what's happened recently, let's stick with that. You know, people are looking at how can I be a part of Black Lives Matter? How can I support social justice for everyone? How can I had Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock on on the Yoga Alliance Community Sangha that I offer, and they're offering scholarships to their 2-year training. You know, I'm working with a company called Union Fit, and they're offering support for teachers of color who don't know how to get their business up online. So there's a lot happening since the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the others. But I think I want to make sure I answer your question. I think change is happening. You know, I feel it, I see it when I'm talking to people in my capacity as a vice president at Yoga Alliance, or even if I'm working with an organization, talking to Kripalu, talking to Aspire events. You know, people are asking me, how can they change their organization? How can they help? So change is happening in the worlds of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. And those are the triad of holistic practices.
Also, Sawadi had a question, but Carrie, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Maya. It's so nice to meet you and
you.
see you in person. I've enjoyed everything you've said. It's really powerful and a lot of lessons to move forward. And I appreciate your answer to that as I'm also thinking about things. The other kind of follow-up question I had is, you know, just even yoga operating. Do you know anything about it operating like or moving to have it funded through like health insurance programs or something, so that it's not just a business, it's not just operating under a small business model?
I think that that is something that is being considered. And I also believe that there are some health insurance places or organizations that will cover the cost of yoga and massage at this point. Now, I don't have any, I don't have details about it, but I do think it's something that if I were needing it, I would look into it. And, you know, you can always reach out to, you know, some of the Yoga Alliance team and pose that question, because that helps in moving the needle.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's really interesting. And my background is in, you know, I'm a researcher and scientist. So I'm also interested in trying to get more funding for clinical studies on yoga, you know, and particularly focusing on vulnerable populations or even kind of frontline healthcare workers right now. And I did speak with some people at Yoga Alliance regarding some racism in a studio here in Sacramento, and they're following through, and it seems like Yoga Alliance is making changes, and so those are good things. I'm happy you're there, and I'm really
Thank
just happy
you.
to hear your thoughts.
I also
I'm
want
sorry, I'm in the car with my kid trying to get to the beach, so I apologize for being in and out.
That's okay. Be careful. Drive carefully. I participated in a National Institute of Health study that was for minorities, and it was about chronic low back pain.
Okay.
And, you know, the National Institute of Health have monies. They got the bucks.
Exactly.
So that's, if you are a researcher with the right credentials and you connect with a hospital. I was brought in as a yoga consultant with the Boston Medical Center. And it was
Okay.
5 years I worked on that grant as a consultant, you know, and it was comparing yoga and self-study from a book about relaxation and medicine. So people were in different categories, but that was the first study for all people of color. And
Wow, that's
NIH,
great.
yeah, it's called Back to Health.
Okay.
And so look into it. You know, my mind has always told me ask.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah.
ask and see if it's available.
Cool. Thank you. It's awesome.
You're welcome.
I know Zawadi had a question.
Then Allison as well. But Sawadi, if we can't hear you because of the internet, you're welcome to type your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Maya. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's so nice to see you.
Oh, you're upside down, Zawadi. Hello.
I know I'm having all kinds
That's
of technical
okay. Don't
issues,
change it.
like the internet, all the things. I'm on my phone, then my computer.
Are
So
you the
I'm out of
Zawadi?
town,
You're
so.
Zawadi?
Yes.
Hi, Zawadi.
Hi, Maya. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you.
Gosh. So what I wanted to share, first of all, yeah, your story is so inspiring. And yoga as a peace practice workshop was. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Can y'all hear me?
Turn your picture off.
Okay.
Turn the picture off. That would be better.
If you turn your video off, it sometimes helps
Okay.
the voice project better.
All right, let me do that.
Take your time.
Lord have mercy. I'm not used to navigating Zoom on my phone, so I don't even know how to turn off the video.
Well,
We can hear you.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just gonna try, and if it doesn't work,
ahead.
then I'll type the question. Yeah. So yeah, I remember the most significant thing about the Black Yoga Teacher Alliance Yoga as a Peace Practice workshop was how safe I felt in the space. And I have never felt that safe in a yoga space. So the face of yoga in Kenya is also very white. There's still like very few relative, Black yoga teachers. And people still think, Kenyans still think, Africans still think that yoga is a white thing, or yoga is a thing it's not for us, right? And so I would love for connections to be made between Black yoga teachers in the US and then Black yoga teachers or Black and brown yoga teachers in the continent. Like I imagine like in Black Yoga Teachers Alliance, in Africa or in Africa then. I have never been, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So like even now, like I would love to organize, and I will anyway, healing spaces for women of color. And it's not a conversation that's happening in Kenya. We don't really talk about racism. Okay, now with everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, everyone in the world is talking more about racism, right? But I've never ever heard of seen any spaces for people of color, for Black people in Kenya. So all this time I've been thinking about it and thinking, you know, I'm not sure how that's going to be received, but it's gotten to the point where it's okay. Like, I'm not for everyone. Some people might have an issue with it. And, you know, yeah. So anyway, the fact that you all already have the language for it, you've done, you know, the work for so many years, I think there's a lot to learn in exchanging. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, Zawadi, I think the first step is important, is just do it. You know, you start with a nucleus of a few people, and that begins your organization. And it started in my kitchen, the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance, with two of us sitting and talking for probably a year about how to do it. You know, but
Yeah.
it's not an easy task, but it's not that arduous. You know, I just start a conversation with a few people, and don't give a care to what others think about it, because that will slow you down. Just simply do what is within you that will nourish you, and then you know you're doing the right thing. And the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance is an international organization. You know, people can join from all over the globe. And when there have been conferences, we've had people from all over join the conference. So I would recommend, you know, just contacting Black Yoga Teachers Alliance and just become a part of the organization, and then see if you can have a branch in Kenya. I'm sure that the executive director is Jana Long, and she'd probably be very excited about
Yeah.
that. Good. So,
Allison, a question.
Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. How's it going? Hi, Maya.
hello.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, I'm totally excited about it. Francisco talked so much about you and just said this would be a great platform, you know, of course, that he put together for me to join in on. I am new to the Yoga Alliance. Actually, I haven't actually registered yet, but I just received my 200-hour certification with the yoga school in Spain. And so I'm looking to also add on to that, but as I do my research for the 300 hours, sometimes I see 500 hour. So is it that I need to do a 300 hour to culminate the 500 hour, or do I need to do a individual separate 500 hour training to, I guess that would be 800 hours. I mean, 700 hours, I'm not sure. But I mean, I'm looking to just definitely make a footprint in the community, especially amongst the lower economical community as well as the church. But I really appreciate also that you talk about, you know, charge what you're worth. I come from an industry of beauty. So I used to be a hairstylist. I still kind of do it part-time. And so it always was difficult for me in that industry to charge what I'm worth, you know, and like you said, even the conversations, you make a chart, you know, you put a price on that, because even now in this pandemic, you know, time frame that we're in, you know, I've gone to less than half the rate, you know, that I was normally getting for teaching a class. And I understand everyone is being impacted, you know, from top to bottom and side to side with this pandemic, small businesses and alike. But at the same time, charging what you're worth, you know, that is a challenge for me, you know, so I would definitely like to have a conversation with you about that, or you can point me in the right direction. I am a member of the Facebook group, but is there another branch of the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance that I need to become a part of?
Yeah, Black Yoga Teachers Alliance is, the Facebook group is a group, just a group, but you can join Black Yoga Teachers Alliance. It's blackyogateachersalliance.com, and connect in there and join the organization. And it's not cost prohibitive. It's a reasonable fee in terms of, you know, I think this is a difficult time for everyone with finances. So it may be challenging to get what you're worth, but never forget what you're worth. You know, do your rate sheet, and then under that, do rate sheet during COVID, and do something
Okay.
that's realistic. And
Okay.
just don't burn yourself out. Say, you know, you're teaching all these classes and you're not making that much. Cut it down. Just teach two and then have some fun. Do you know what I
Okay.
mean? Spend that other
Yes.
time either doing your practice or you know, being with a friend or whatever. But don't teach more when the rate is so low. And look into virtual teaching.
Yes.
You know, look into virtual. Go to union.fit and see if you can get their support to help you create a virtual platform.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I've been hearing from different people, teachers of color, and they're like, I get so many more students now. They come to class because it's virtual, you know, so look into that, because there are some people who really love being home and having the ability to, you know, do their practice in their living room versus getting dressed and going out.
Allison, to your other question, your certification will be cumulative. So you don't need to take a full 500 hour. Those 200 hours go towards the 500.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Charlene.
So,
Thank you,
so
Celine.
you could come join us in Diani Beach in February, Allison.
Yay, by the way. That's in
Allison,
Kenya.
Right. All right.
where are you, Allison? Are you in the States?
Yes, I'm in Washington, D.C.,
Oh,
the
perfect.
nation's capital.
That's wonderful.
And Allison's coming
Yes.
out to Oregon in August for a Thai massage course that we're doing also online. That's going to be our first online course in August, first Thai massage certification.
Even that can go towards her 500 hours, correct, Fran?
Yeah, because it's like when you're taking a course with someone that has the 500-hour like leadership
Right.
cumulative, then some of the lessons are anatomy oriented. So those will be
Yeah.
able to go towards that as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
I
is it
think
retroactive?
as long as it's active. I mean, you have to keep your active registration, or you just register all at once. If you've never registered, you know, and you have a certificate from someone who is a certified and registered yoga teacher school, then you can put it together and register all at once.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Because, yeah, I'm registered with I took training with Francisco. I did a yin training. I did a meditation training. I've done a few different trainings. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
if it's a
welcome.
500-hour school, like if it's, you know, if it has that certification, then you can move it towards that.
Yay. Thank you.
So are there any other questions at this moment?
I'm curious about the sit-in and at the Kripalu, because that sounds like a really awesome experience. And I'd love to know like how you came about organizing the sit-in and just how it felt for you. Any experiences you want to share about it?
Well, there were two other women. One was Margot Jenny, and she taught the Delaney sisters, who were the two blind yogis who lived to be over 100. She was their yoga teacher in New York. So I
Oh,
became
my goodness.
friends
I
with
know
her.
them.
You know Margot Jenny. Anyway, and then there were two other women of color that, you know, through my years of being there and doing workshops in the retreat, I met, no, this was before the retreat, I met them. And we talked about the fact that they were teaching, but there were no people of color. and that every time we came to Kripalu individually, we would never see anyone who looked like us. So those conversations and get-togethers with them led us to talk about how can we, you know, promote change? How can we wake these people up to these issues and the fact that we really need this in our communities? And when our last conversation, I think I went to New York to hang out with them, and we talked about we were all going to go to the annual yoga teachers conference. And then we just made the decision, well, this is where we will have our sit-in. You know, when I call it a sit-in, I mean, we had a space. We asked for space the moments like say 20 minutes before, because we wanted to talk about diversity and inclusion. We were not on the program. You know, they were very surprised, and we stood there, and then we sat there until an announcement was made about what we were doing.
They were surprised by you inquiring for space. Is that what you?
Well, in other words, there's a platform for the conference.
Right. And
you weren't a part of that platform.
Exactly, and you asked to be a part of that platform, and
right, because we couldn't commandeer those people. We had to have a spot, you know, where we could sit and bring people together. It was good.
Great. We
So,
have more questions from Maya, anyone? We're probably coming toward the end in the next 10, 15 minutes.
Hi, Maya. This is Dante. How are you?
Hi, Dante. I'm well.
Question. Starting earlier off in your journey, as everything, you know, you were learning more about it. One thing that's pretty heavy within communities of color in general is the backing of beliefs, such as religion, and something that can be, it may not be that they don't want to try it, but just the thought of, hey, this goes against my values of Christianity or Muslim or whatever. Can you express maybe some of the challenges as it pertains to educating the public, getting them more involved? Because chanting, even though we may sing our prayers in a church or anything along those lines, is very heavily rooted within communities of color, is their value systems within their religion. Is that another piece beyond just the understanding just of not only of the race, but also having to overcome someone's values within their beliefs and not really having that, you know, effect? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And you know, like I said, my children had an intervention with me in the mid 80s, and everyone in my church and my church family were frightened that I was going down a bad path, you know, because to them, yoga was not akin to God or our religion. And the fact that yoga had several gods and deities, you know, it frightened people. When I started teaching people of color, that was always an issue. And so one of the things that I did when I had my pad and I would list the places where I was going to call, I started to call the Ministerial Alliance, have meetings with them. I spoke at different church occasions where I could talk about yoga and people could ask me questions. I knew that I would not go into a church and chant Om. I mean, my common sense told me that. I knew that when I was in, there's a big church, Ebenezer Baptist Church here in Rhode Island, I was not going to do any bowing. You know, I left out the accoutrements of yoga and just stuck with the benefits. And I started to educate people around in my community. You know, I used to do sessions at the public library where people would come and just discuss yoga with me. And I could always, you know, I would encourage people to go with different things to eat. It sounds terrible, but it's the truth. You know, I would serve refreshments. I would have, um, you know, sometimes I'd give away a free class, a ticket for a free class. But you know, someone asked me about the finance thing. I never found that I had to change the price of anything I was doing for people of color. You know, I always charged what I charged, and I always made space for those who couldn't pay. Did that help you, Dante?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your
Thank you.
story.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of people who are fearful. I have spoken at my temple, and I remember teaching a course on meditation and teaching, and I taught from the Bible, you know, because meditation is not just in the tradition of yoga. It has a tradition in many religions, you know. So when I could make similarities and connections, like I am that I am is in many religious texts, and yoga it's talked about asi, I am that I am. And so when you find those similarities, it helps to break down the wall. But I never, you know, I never felt like I wanted to push or prod people. I just spoke the truth and then went about my business, you know. And that's the way, because you can't change people's minds until they are ready to have their minds changed.
Agreed.
Yeah,
It's
Maya,
true.
you helped me come up with another Sangha topic, which is in part Eastern and African spiritual influences on Abrahamic religions. But that's for another, that might be a bit of a controversial one, Fran. I don't know if folks are ready.
I think I think if we're talking about it, then we're ready. You know.
Okay, I'm ready.
Thank you. I think you're right, Francisco.
Yeah. So
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
I would even go beyond. I mean, not to go too far down that path, but to go beyond. You know,
So,
they happen to be there, the direct connections. Yeah. Go ahead, Maya.
no, was that my echo, I think, again?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was an echo.
I think it's me.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also other echoes, like Sawadi's echoing on the chat right now. What you
Oh,
just shared,
good.
you know? That's a whole different echo, but it's good. You know, that means your words are resonating.
Good.
He's
Thank you.
joining us in the pool with his daughter right now. I really appreciate this, you know, circle we got going on here.
It's nice. Yeah, I just wanted to bring us around to the moment where I am today, you know, and through the various things that I've endeavored, um, you know, I came to um, do a lot of consulting work. And 2 years ago, I was asked to consult on one of the standards projects with Yoga Alliance. And months later, I find myself being invited to join their leadership team. And so it's been a couple of years I've been with them, and we are, you know,
Can I interrupt you quick, Maya? What, like, just when you say their leadership team, what does that mean?
well, the way the organization works, there's a chief executive officer, and then there are several vice presidents. And I'm one of those several vice presidents. So we are leaders in all things Yoga Alliance. We work in concert with the president on A to Z, from A to Z.
Gotcha.
But you know, what I like is that it's full circle for me, because prior to yoga, I was singing jazz, but my day job was working in affirmative action and equal employment opportunity, you know, and dealing with racism in housing and racism in employment discrimination. So it's interesting. And also I lived through the 60s and the Civil Rights Act, and CETA programs and all the things that were done and stopped and started, to come right back in a field that I am on fire with, which is yoga, and be tasked with working with diversity, inclusivity, accessibility, and equity from a global perspective, and then from the depth and breadth of yoga has been it's like my vision, it has been realized, you know, to be at this juncture, working with one of the leaders in one of the leading organizations in the yoga world. So it pleases me to have this position and to be able to be supportive of people from marginalized communities, people in need, people who would not traditionally be involved in yoga, and to support teachers to become registered, and to support international teachers to deal with, to deal with the language issues that Yoga Alliance has in terms of communicating with our international community. So I'm just very pleased to have this position.
Yeah, and Maya, I want to just give thanks for what you're doing with that, because sometimes when I work with boards, I feel sometimes they're bored. They're not very action oriented, the boards, or certain leadership. They're disconnected from what's taking place in grassroots. So I really just appreciate being in that paradigm with you right now, and being some, and Salim and Dante and other people that have joined, because it's very action oriented. And I really love to see like love in action. And so thank you for moving that.
Thank you. You're welcome. And I'll just say that in these latter years, as I've grown older, I have, yoga has ashrams, stages. You start when you're very active, you're very young, and you move through different stages. And the ashrama, where I find, and I love being today, is in the study of yoga philosophy. So this has been a wonderful time for me to go inward and study the Gita, and study the Upanishads, and the all of the various Kriya yoga, and it's just a wonderful time. And I wanted to just read this as we end the Sangha. I was led to teach people to care for their health and well-being through the holistic practices of yoga, mindfulness, and meditation, and to incorporate strategies from yoga philosophy to effect lifestyle changes. The diversity of yoga practitioners brings a varying tone and spirit to yoga. Indigenous wisdom is interspersed with ancient teachings, as variety and inclusivity are important aspects of yoga today. Thank you all.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Maya. And are we going to get a song tonight? Putting you on.
You started with a little teaser with your music. So
I know.
Next time.
Let's let them
Absolutely.
and music.
We definitely would love to have you back anytime. Thank you all so much for coming, participating in this circle. Beautiful Sangha tonight. Beautiful words and thoughts, Maya. Really, really appreciate. Maybe, Fran, we can give a couple updates on our side. I think you could close out the recording probably.
Yeah, just we have the rising retreat taking place July 24 to 26, and we're really aspiring to have Maya return and have a circle of leadership and elders and people that we've learned from to close that on that Sunday Sangha. So excited for that. And
Yeah.
in August, we have our Thai massage online certification taking place. It's going to be 2 weekends. So if you guys have questions about that. Maya, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to talking to you on Wednesday as well.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The recording now, if you guys want to continue dialoguing, but I'll be posting the Sangha's link onto our blog section of the website if you guys want to listen in later. All right.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everyone.